Imagine a media platform that reshapes the conversation, empowers your voice, and redefines the Bronx community. Bronx Post, changing the reality, changing the narrative. For businesses, politicians, and government agencies, we offer targeted advertising solutions that drive results. Amplify your message. Reach the heart of the Bronx and beyond. Our platform connects you to the community. Learn more. Email info@bronxpost.com or call 718-892-5555. Visit www.bronxpost.com for breaking news and updates. Bronx Post, changing the reality, changing the narrative.
Welcome to the Muslim World News, your round trip to the Muslim world. Live from New York City. My name is Stephen Quadrame. I am your host. The executive producer behind the scene is Mutiyo Olawoye. Today, we have a special guest to discuss about disability, or what he calls different ability. And before I introduce our special guest, I want to read something from CDC. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, roughly 28.7%, or 1 in 4 adults in the United States have some type of disability. This accounts for over 70 million adults, with the most common functional disability being cognitive impairment, which accounts for about 13.9%, followed by mobility challenges, which is about 12.2%. 29% of adults in the United States, according to CDC, have some type of disability. Some may be temporal, while others are permanent. This is a huge percentage of the population, over 70 million. And for the longest, people with disability or different ability, as Larry calls them, were not given adequate services so that they can live their lives accordingly like anybody else. But because of the advocacy that have been launched by people like Larry and others and organizations and some conscientious journalists, the disabled community have now access to some of the services and products that are custom made for their optimal functionality. That is why you see them competing in almost every facet of society, things that were not available to them before. But that is why we have our special guest to continue to advocate, for equity and for equitable treatment of individuals that we may deem disabled. So Larry spent over 30 years on the subject as a journalist, has been advocating and highlighting the disparities and the issues and the inequities affecting, the community that he called, different ability. So rather than being deemed disabled, he called them, different ability. And he is right. Because today, here in New York, wherever you go, you see individuals that others may deem disabled, yet they are holding employment. They are doing everything that, everybody else is doing. So, yes, I join Larry to say it's different ability. And whatever their so-called diagnosed ability maybe, they can function as well as anybody else. With that being said, I want to introduce you to, Larry Seiler. He's a journalist, longtime advocate. He even dedicated a show entirely to this issue. And that's why we're very excited and honored to have my friend, my fellow New Yorker, Larry Seiler, a longtime journalist, dedicated his life to addressing the issues concerning, this community. So, Larry, the floor is yours. Greet us.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Shakay, and thank you for letting me be on your television program today, Muslim World News. Yes, Able and on Air is dedicated to, my wife and I produce it. We're executive producers. It's dedicated to uh, helping people with disabilities and motivating them, not just helping them with news and views about people with disabilities, but in many abilities. We focus on issues such as autism, cerebral palsy, different health topics, so on and so forth. And even during COVID, we were taping. We were in Vermont for about 12 years, and now we're back here in New York. Um, for those that remember me in the Bronx for 20 of those 30 years, um, I I was at BronxNet Community Television doing a television program called Special People, Special Issues, and I started out as a news reporter uh, doing those topics, and then eventually decided to start producing a show. But it's vitally needed to do television for and about people with disabilities. So thank you so much for inviting me today for your television show, Muslim World News.
Thank you, Larry, and we are very excited to have you here. I don't think anybody knows the issues, the relevancy, and the advocacy that is needed, better than you. This is you dedicate your life for it. But talk to us in general about this community that is deemed disabled community.
Well, so let's start with some of the issues that we are facing. I deal with a very minute case, very small case of cerebral palsy, and I deal with being legally blind as well as some other issues. Um, Growing up in the 1970s wasn't easy for anyone who was deemed challenged. Back then, people with disabilities were misdiagnosed. If you remember, let's go back to 1972 when Geraldo Rivera went over the wall with ABC News. There was a horrible institution called Willowbrook State School. It wasn't a school at all. It was a warehouse, as they would call it, for people with disabilities. People were force fed, people were mistreated, people even were used, people with disabilities were even used um, eh, for the hepatitis vaccine, they were used as guinea pigs and given the hepatitis vaccine and eventually died. There was another institution in New York State called Letchworth Village. Letchworth Village was in Rockland County. That place now is a graveyard because people died there. Mario, politician Mario Biaggi, Congressman Mario Biaggi, turned around and um, looked at Willowbrook as one of the horrible places. He even said in his comment to Geraldo Rivera at that time in the 1970s, prisoners get get better treatment than people with disabilities. And in different countries today, such as Syria and other world countries, and since you're dealing with the world, there are still certain countries that put people with disabilities in institutions, and there are still 37 states that institutionalize people with disabilities. New York deals with the transportation problem. Yes, it has changed. It's gotten a little bit better, but it needs to change there. The place where we came from Vermont. Vermont only had a bus system. They didn't have a train system. Yes, they had they had Amtrak, but it was still a not so great bus system. Sometimes you had to take a cab to get somewhere if the bus wasn't going there. So there are numerous problems in this world, and you and I spoke yesterday off camera. The problem extends from an economic standpoint. If you don't have the money, then people with disabilities will, I hate using the word suffer because we really don't suffer from anything, but people with disabilities will suffer. I mean, people need to get to doctor appointments. People need to get to their jobs. And yes, people with disabilities do work. Not very many, but those that do need to get to their job. And how can you get to your job if you don't have adequate transportation? The MTA, I mean, new the world. Uh, I, I hate saying it, but we're in a deficit right now. The MTA is suffering. The federal government, the federal government refuses to give money to the MTA to finish projects. So, that's another thing. And in terms of economic standpoint, if you live in bad housing, let's say, and you need to get to your job one day, but yet you have problems with, the elevator, and the elevator in your New York City building doesn't work, then what's the point of having a job if you can't get to it? So these are the things that we are dealing with, but we need to say to these politicians or people that help us say, hey, we need uh, a better systematic system, i- if I could say that.
Yes, very good. I know that places like New York, because of the coordinated campaign and advocacy for people like you, there are services that are now really equalizing the level playing field between
Mhm.
so-called, the public and those that are deemed to be disabled. But tell us, areas where you think, more equitable services need to be had.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Now the question is, I know that we have done a great job in New York, just like New York, in terms of equalizing the level playing field, like the
Mhm.
subway, even the cab, services are
Yeah.
required.
For example, the other day when we first got here, we've been in Queens 2 weeks already. And one of the things that I was very happy about, my wife uses a wheelchair due to the fact that she's an amputee. Okay. And one of the things that I'm really happy about is that New York, it, I mean, other big cities probably too, Boston, Chicago, and other places. But I was really happy to see wheelchair accessible cabs and wheelchair accessible Ubers. If you have to call an Uber for wheelchair accessibility, you can call one. If you need a cab that's wheelchair accessible, you can get one. So, but smaller cities don't have this. They're starting to have that, but they don't have enough of it. And the problem becomes if you don't have enough of something, people suffer or people need it. One of the things for years that um, so let's go with two main areas: mental health and housing. Okay. Um, the New York City Housing Authority for years. And I don't want to bash them or anything. They're a great service for those that need low income housing. However, however, for years, the landlords of the New York City Housing Authority, it's it's like putting a band-aid on a situation that will never be fixed. Um, there's there's a good friend of mine that has been on several of my shows when I used to do special people, special issues. Reverend Carmen Miranda. She's a huge advocate in the LGBT world and also the disability uh, realm, the disability situation in the Bronx. Now, she's advocated on housing also. Uh, the problem with New York City housing, too many chiefs or too many, how can I say, too many chefs spoil the soup. When you have too many commissioners or too many people that don't know what they're doing, why do you have buildings with lack of security? You can walk into a New York City housing building, New York City Housing Authority. We're talking about NYCHA, NYCHA, New York City Housing Authority. You people 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, walking in, no key. They can just walk into the building. The building has lack of security. The building smells like urine, smells like feces. Um, People have died or people have gotten really sick from the odor. People have died from the security, not having security cameras in a building. You have drug dealers that just walk in. So that's a big problem. Um, so that needs to be fixed. Let's go to mental health. Okay. Um, Mayor Adams did try to do a wonderful job but there's still things in our fair city of New York that need to be fixed. Don't automatically assume. Now, when you assume, I don't mean to say this because I'm on a professional television program here. But sometimes when you assume, it's not a good thing. Okay. Um, don't assume that every single homeless person has a mental health condition or has a disability. If you get what I'm saying here, Mayor Adams and other mayors want to put or wanted to put people with homeless, like President Trump thinks that all homeless people have a mental disability or have a disability and they should be all locked away. No, that's not the case. If you have a mental challenge, we'll get you the help. But don't assume that every single person in the train system or the bus system or on the street is is um is disabled. Okay, they just have problems that they maybe need to go to a doctor or they just need help with a job or need help finding shelter. But the problem is in our fair city, there's not enough shelters to go around. There's not enough housing to go around. It's called so when I used to work for BronxNet and some other public access television programs, public access centers, public access producers put their name in what they call a lottery system. If you get my point there, it's like putting your name in a hat. Housing goes the same way. You have to put yourself on a list and hope that you get put on the list, but the list shouldn't be so long like your coattail, like you're waiting for years and years and years and years. Then they tell you, okay, your number 550 or number 775. People with disabilities need appropriate housing, but we should not. And people with that are mentally or physically challenged, we should not be waiting for years and years and years and years. That is the problem. But the problem also extends that there is not enough staffing to give people enough housing. So when there's not enough staffing, other people suffer. So these are the big problems. Don't assume someone has a challenge. Like, for example, when people were misdiagnosed years ago, I was misdiagnosed as mentally retarded. That word is a horrible thing. They stopped using that word. But we are smart. We 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 have jobs. We have lives. We get married. That's another thing for another show. You know, we should be treated like human beings, not numbers, not, and also don't assume that, okay, I'll give you a prime example. The other day I went to a store in Queens. I had a little bit of a beard. They thought I was homeless. Sir, you need to shave. I'm Jewish. Jewish people sometimes don't shave, um, for certain holidays or certain things. But these are things that need to change in our society, not just disability, but don't assume someone is challenged just because something is off. Oh, your shirt is out. Oh, you didn't take a bath, or just something, or or you need to wash. But don't now certain religions I know of, like people of Indian descent, certain times of the year, like Ramadan, you don't eat for a certain amount of time, or like in the Jewish religion on Sabbath, we can't bathe on certain days, but don't assume that people are horrible just because. And these are things that New York needs to change about the system of disability. We're human beings. We just want to be treated as humans. Go
Absolutely.
ahead.
No, absolutely. No, 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 no. What you're saying is we need more sensitizing, public sensitizing,
Yeah,
about
more.
our neighbors.
We need more sensitivity. Uh, I think that's the word we're looking for here.
Hmm.
People that work for the office, it's called OPWDD, the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities. Okay, when you become a direct care worker, or you become a nurse for that agency, or a counselor for that agency, or a manager for that agency, or anything uh, that requires training, right? Um, they give you sensitivity training, but all across the board, every single job in this fair city, or even if you don't have a job, I think that everybody should take, it's called mental health first aid. Okay. If you see someone that's having an episode, and or a seizure on the street, or something like that, I think that every single person in our fair city should take a class on how to deal with someone with epilepsy, or someone with a mental challenge. Um, for example, people with there's one type of disability that's very important. I used to teach students at Lehman College media through BronxNet. And one of my students, I'm not mentioning names, but one of my students had Tourette's syndrome. And what Tourette's syndrome is, they blurt out. Sometimes they would scream, they would yell, or like curse, but they don't mean to curse. Okay. Um, I took sensitivity training on how to deal with this. But I think more employers should give sensitivity training, and just more agencies like the CDC or like the World Health Organization or OPWDD should give these trainings for free, or even the American Red Cross, on how to deal with the signs of disabilities. The NYPD and I'm talking about the police department and other police agencies, they're also now coming up with ways on how to deal with autism, but also there's a situation. Um, it's called nonviolence, but um, there's a device called the Bolo Wrap that the New York City Police Department and other police agencies are using. You push a button. If you see someone in distress, you push a button and it comes out with a rope of some sort, but it's not um, constraining somebody. It's not handcuffing them. It's just putting them to the floor and helping the police officer. Can I help you? Do you need help? And then they take it off, and then they figure a way how to help you. But for many years, the police departments of our different cities, Boston, you know, they didn't know how to deal with people with disabilities. They just assumed someone was having an episode, and some people with disabilities have died by the hands of police officers. I'll give you a prime example. I don't know if he was challenged in any way, but if you remember the Amadou Diallo case
Mhm.
years ago, we're talking about going back. Um, Hello, can you hear
Yes,
me?
yes,
Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
Mhm.
We're talking about. Sorry about that.
Mhm.
The Amadou Diallo case
Mhm.
years ago. He just had his wallet and keys.
Mhm.
Amadou Diallo had his wallet and keys. He wasn't reaching for a gun. It was late at night, and here's a man either coming home from work or coming home from his mother's house or coming from wherever. But police assumed he had a gun. A wallet is not a gun. Another example. Years ago, before I got married, I was a bachelor. I was living in Yonkers. I had an apartment in Yonkers. It was 11 o'clock at night. Now at night I use a blind cane, okay, to get around. And a Yonkers police officer asked me. Now it's in a holster. They asked me, "Is that a gun?" And he was getting ready to shoot me. I said, "No, sir. Let me show you. Please don't shoot me. Here's my blind cane, so on and so forth." And then he stopped and he said sorry. But you can't assume that it's automatically a weapon. You're
All
right.
right. All right,
Um,
Larry, let's go to commercial break and come back.
yes,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Imagine a media platform that reshapes the conversation, empowers your voice, and redefines the Bronx community. Bronx Post, changing the reality, changing the narrative. For businesses, politicians, and government agencies, we offer targeted advertising solutions that drive results. Amplify your message. Reach the heart of the Bronx and beyond. Our platform connects you to the community. Learn more. Email info@bronxpost.com or call 718-892-5555. Visit www.bronxpost.com for breaking news, and updates. Bronx Post, changing the reality, changing the narrative.
Welcome back to the Muslim World News. Our guest today is Mr. Larry Seiler, long-time advocate for the disabled community. So Larry, we're back, and I wanted to find out that there are laws and rules and regulations on the books that protect, the disabled community. Are there laws and rules that we are not fulfilling?
So for the last 15 minutes of the show, I'm going to really, or 10, 15 minutes, I'm going to really talk about the laws that are not being fulfilled. And that is, I feel as a journalist that the ADA needs to change big time. When we were living in Vermont, one of the biggest things that was a huge issue. Restaurants didn't fulfill it. Businesses didn't fulfill it. So on and so forth. There were too many cracks in the pavement. Okay, curb cuts are a big problem when it comes to helping people with disabilities. That is a situation, when it comes to owning a business. And I know that there's a huge, big thing called a grandfather clause. Okay, and what a grandfather clause is, especially with the ADA, if a building is very old, okay, maybe more than 100 years old, or a landmark, businesses don't have to make that, accessible. But now, it's really a must. Okay, certain countries. I'll give you an example. Jerusalem in Israel. Israel is a wonderful country. We have family there. It's a wonderful place to be. But there's certain things like the old city of Jerusalem that have still cobblestone streets, and it's not really accessible, and you just have to figure a way to get around it. They're working on it. They're fixing it. But for example, if you can't get down to a catering hall, you can't go see a wedding. Or if the catering hall is down on the basement level or something, and what if a building has no elevator? Example, in Vermont, when we were there, I was advocating for an elevator in an art gallery. It took them 4 years to get. We were in Vermont for 12. It took the organization, the art organization, and the gallery 4 years to get an elevator. Either maybe it was lack of funds or something. Okay, because that could be too. If an organization doesn't have funds, they can't do it. Do a GoFundMe or something to get those funds, but it's real important for agencies now. For example, churches. Not all churches, not all synagogues are accessible, but they have something called they have something called the rollaway ramp, or a temporary ramp. You can get those things to put in a building to make it accessible. So there are ways around it. But I feel that the disability community, or even the non-disabled community, shouldn't make excuses for doing. for doing something. Um, oh, we can't do it because of this. We can't do it because of that. Tell us the truth. Why? Don't say you can't. But there's always a way around it. And um, don't give us excuses. Oh, we can't hire you because of this. But you can make allowances and you can make um, accommodations. For example, I've been legally blind for a while now. Okay. Um, Technology, and this is basically the last thing I'm going to say. Technology has changed over the years with people who are blind and visually impaired. So there's no excuse. There are computers, there are phones, there are tablets. Um, there's a wonderful accommodation, and this goes back to the ADA. It's called Zoom Text. If you're blind or visually impaired, like I am, and you need something read, or you need to do a PDF, or you need to do a contract, or you need to read something, you can push a button and it can read for you. Or it's like an automatic reader. So when corporations make excuses, oh, we can't, figure a way for them to figure a way and then advocate to make sure they can. Because if they don't hire you, then guess what? You can create your own job. Like I tell people, create your own job, especially like I have done in media for many years. But don't make excuses that something can't be accessible. Figure a way for it to be accessible. And that's all I have to say.
No, very good. And are there agencies or organizations that provide training, for people with different disabilities?
Yes, there are several, and I'm going to give about 5 or 6 because your show doesn't go on for 2 hours. I wish it did. I wish it did.
Gotcha.
But so the Office of Mental Retardation, Developmental Disabilities is one. Sydney, the Center for Independent Living and the Disabled, that's 2. And for mental health training, you can try the Department of Health. I'm sure they have mental health first aid that they can help you. But there are tons of organizations that do help people with disabilities, especially the Office of Mental Retardation, Developmental Disabilities. They can give you lots of training, even if you volunteer for them. They can give you training on how to recognize disabilities also. That's another. If we know the signs of some disabilities are silent, so we don't know the signs. But um, but if we knew the signs of every single disability, I think it would be hard. But deafness is sometimes, it would help if people would get sign language training and other things. So if you took a class on basic sign language like I did, then you would be able to recognize the signs. Okay. But like I said, going back to this original conversation, don't assume everybody has a disability just because they look different. Get to know them first. And then if they have a challenge, then you can work on learning the training for that challenge if there's training. So thank you for having me on your show today. Is there any more questions you would like to ask?
Yeah, actually, you've done a wonderful job, and I believe that our audience are benefiting immensely from your wealth of knowledge about this issue, which is very, very important. My question to you.
One thing I do want to say.
Mhm.
Other countries and I'm going to point out Israel.
Hmm.
Israel has wonderful, uh, um, Israel, Israel has wonderful training on how to recognize people with disabilities. Israel has a wonderful, uh, they've dealt for many years in the medical field, pacemakers, technology, things like that. But before you go live in a country, any country, or any place, you should do the research, about housing and so on, and get to know the place first before you decide to move there, because that would really help on certain circumstances. Again, I would like to thank you for having me on on Muslim World News, and I look forward for Abel Denonair to be part of Parrot TV coming up very soon. I would definitely like to do a show. Thank you so much for making me part of the Muslim World News family and your television network, Parrot TV.
Now, Larry, I'm sure Mutiu, our executive producer, would love to have your program on his television programming, because you are very, very few among all the journalists that dedicate your time and your professionalism and your resources for this very, very big issue, but unfortunately often neglected. So I'm sure we will be very
Yeah,
happy to have you
that's
on
one
board.
thing. 5 more minutes if I have it.
Yeah.
People with disabilities have been neglected for years.
Mhm.
Stop making excuses and stop. And like I said, there are still institutions that house people with disabilities. So stop institutionalizing us, or as I should say, stop throwing us away and just putting us somewhere where, oh, we can't deal with you, lock and key, goodbye. Don't do that, because you will resent it for the rest of your life. You would have to deal with the bigger picture here. There's lots of lawsuits if you just lock somebody up in the institution, without knowing the facts. But other than that, thank you for having me on the show.
No, absolutely, Larry. We didn't even talk about the economic benefits of allowing and facilitating, the employment and the integration of this community into the labor force. And I'm sure that's another show, we will, we'll be having another time. But all I'm saying is that for those of you who are watching, you are watching Larry Seiler, someone who dedicated his life as a journalist, to highlighting issues that are very important, to an often neglected community, and advocate for adequate services. And I believe that we should all join force, to support him, so that those people that some deem, not able to function, would not only be able to function, but participate in our employment labor force and our, social life. So, and I think that is what, Larry has been doing, and it is very effective, advocating for elevators, advocating for pavements, advocating for all the services that they're entitled to. And Larry, we're your partners. Whatever we can do, to further discuss, you can definitely, bank on it. So with that being said, Larry, you can give whatever closing, statement, advice, guidance. The floor is yours.
Okay, so my closing statement. Um, well, obviously, Abel Denonair will be on Parrot TV, but my closing statement would be: give us a chance on employing us, and give us a chance on, being our friend. Don't throw us away, and just learn how, learn more from a disabled person, or an able person, and they'll be your friend as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. That is a beautiful closing statement. So that was Larry Seiler, a journalist, founder of Able, an on-air television program, very effective program. I have been a guest on the show. We talk a lot about, services that are available and services that need to be made available for this community. So I just want to, in a closing remarks on this show today, as you heard directly from Larry, who not only advocate for it, but he himself deal, with the same issues. And if it wasn't for his leadership and his commitment and his dedication to what he does, he would be rendered pretty much useless and unemployable and not being able to function. But he did not allow whatever the doctors diagnosed to prevent him from, participating maximally, to his socioeconomic life. And Larry, thank you, and we salute you, and we partner with you on this. And I'm sure Muti will be happy, to set up a show so that you continue on this wonderful work of advocacy and highlighting and informing the public about certain issues and even certain phrases not to be used, because labels do matter. When you do label people negatively, that labeling can be disabling. So therefore, everything that we need to learn, from you, so that we can not only be advocate but be, helpful, to this community that is made up of our neighbors. We are ready for it. I just wanted to highlight some of the things that we spoke earlier about the services that are available in places such as New York City. For the past several decades, there have been intensive and intentional advocacy to making sure that individuals from all facets of their life have access to the same services that everybody else has access to. That's why even the cab drivers are forced now, or even the cab companies are forced now to use vehicles that are accessible by all public, travelers. And, restaurants and buildings and house of worship, all government buildings, meet, the ADA requirement. So this is New York, and there are other places with adequate services. I know that there's still a lot to be, to be done, but we are far, far ahead of where we were, a few decades ago. There was a journalist, called Geraldo, Rivera, that done massive, work in highlighting the plight of this community. And I think his work has forever changed, the reality, for the people that we call disabled communities, and how they are, kept in congregate setting as just, pretty much subjects and objects. So Geraldo was able to, put a spotlight on their condition and the treatment and the disparities. And I think the government said, this is embarrassing, inhumane, and we can no longer tolerate it. These are human beings, and these are able-bodied people, differently, but, with proper resources and proper help, they can function like anybody else, and they are. Even now, our sports, physical contact sports, you see people that we used to deem disabled competing and winning. If you watch BBC News, for example, some of the journalists it sent all over the world, some of them are blind, some of them have no hands, some of them can't walk, some of them use wheelchair, but they're reporting and their services just like any other journalist. All I'm saying is that let us stop looking at people that don't look like us or have all the attributes like us and thinking that they cannot function, they cannot be employed, or they cannot be asset to our economic system. They are able, and they are doing it, and New York and other places have already demonstrated that when you provide equity and equitable treatment, people function as they should, regardless of what they are missing, regardless of how they look and how they appear. So I am very happy that we had Larry on this show, because this is an area that is near and dear to me, for personal, professional, as well as for humanistic way. And I will do everything, to continue to further, the education on this topic and to work with Larry. And I'm sure once Larry, start his show on, Parrot TV, I think you will get a better education and so that you can join, the advocacy. Let me end with this. Muslim World News is your program, is your platform. It's a place where you can learn valuable things. It empowers the audience. We are soliciting input, how to make it better, how to be more effective, how to be more useful. But we're also soliciting sponsors because, like anything else, for us to be able to maintain our services and expanding it and have more journalists to host different shows and bring you valuable information, we need sponsors. We need those who advertise. I promise you, the more sponsors we have, the more relevant this show becomes to your lives and to your communities. Even though it is a Muslim World News, this is a public forum. We have discussed almost an hour with Larry, and what we discuss has nothing to do about religion. It has everything to do about our neighbors, our self-empowerment, what is beneficial. And as we move forward, we will continue to do that. And for that, we are seeking your sponsorship, corporate sponsorship. And if you have business and you want marketing and publicity and advertisement, we are more than happy, to help you out. Muti Olawuyi leads a team of PR services, marketing services, and every single aspect of your business, regardless of where the business is located or the services you provide or the product that you have, he can create a package that will enhance, the reach to your audience and your would-be audience. With that being said, I just wanted to thank you, and I just wanted to ask you to continue to follow us. We are on every Sunday from 4 to 5, and every show bring you relevant information, informative information, and helpful information, because we're not doing it just as a profession. We're doing it because it is from the heart. The guesses and the issues we discuss are issues that are important to us. God bless you all, and I see you next week, next Sunday.
Imagine a media platform that reshapes the conversation, empowers your voice, and redefines the Bronx community. Bronx Post, changing the reality, changing the narrative. For businesses, politicians, and government agencies, we offer targeted advertising solutions that drive results. Amplify your message. Reach the heart of the Bronx and beyond. Our platform connects you to the community. Learn more. Email info@bronxpost.com or call 718-892-5555. Visit www.bronxpost.com for breaking news and updates. Bronx Post, changing the reality, changing the narrative.